Inspire Podcast, where mental health meets real life. I'm your host, Samantha Ariza, therapist, mental health educator, mom, semi-normal human being, depends on who you talk to. But I want to be your go-to person for real, relatable conversations about mental health, about emotional wellness, about healing, about growth, all of these things that sometimes we need a little help in. Around here, we believe that mental health does not have to be stiff or scary. We keep it human, practical, and you know what? We have a little fun along the way because you know what? Life's messy, and we're just trying to figure it out as best as we can. But this is not a replacement for therapy or meant to be therapy. This is just a way to get some extra help for ourselves along the way because, hey, we need as much support as we can get. Each week, you'll find honest insights, practical tools that are science-based, and of course, stories that remind you that you're not alone in this. Whether you're on your own healing journey or supporting someone else, there's something here for you. So sit back, take a nice deep breath in and out, get comfy, and let's dive in. And today we're talking to a friend of mine from work. Her name is Tiffany, and she works with this company called Minding Your Mind. Minding Your Mind is a mental health advocacy group that shares presentations about mental health, as well as what Tiffany does, which is share her own story. And with Tiffany, I want to just have this kind of trigger warning because we do talk about, sexual abuse, and we do talk about some trauma as well as mentions of suicide. So if that is triggering for you, you might want to skip this episode, or you might just have to be ready to turn it off and take some space for yourself. But Tiffany has a great story of advocacy and how she tries to share her journey and make sure that people do not feel alone. She also discusses a little bit about 988 and how that has helped her along in her journey. So let's dive into it and get to know more about Tiffany. Thank you so much for joining me today, Tiffany. I'm so excited for today. I hope you are too.
Yes, I am. Thank you so much for having me here.
Awesome. So, I know we've spoken once before and I got to hear your whole story. So I'm very excited for my audience and for everybody listening in or watching to really see what you have to offer and really hear your story. Because I think there's a lot of things in your story that can really connect to people out there listening out there in, the world right now. So before we get started, how do you usually describe your mental health journey in your own words?
I would describe my mental health journey as one of transformation, healing, and learning how to go from surviving silently to beginning to heal out loud. For years, I was a high functioning student. I looked so happy on the outside, so hyper, so full of energy. But inside, I was struggling with so much trauma, so much depression, anxiety, grief, so much that I was bottling up inside because I thought it would be better for myself.
Mhm.
And I thought that if I were to express my feelings, then I would get more judgment, more negativity. And I realized that when I began to start healing out loud, that that's when real change and real growth started to happen.
Yes. Oh, that's awesome to hear. What do you feel is important for listeners to know before we get really into your story and talking about mental health? What do you want them to know before we get started?
Before we get started, I would want anyone listening to know that there is always help available for anyone struggling. You could always text or call 988, and you can always remain completely anonymous. There's 24/7 help and support available. So if anything in here is triggering for some or maybe emotional, just to know that 988 is always there. I would also say that before we get into this, that I do cover heavy topics. And I would say to anyone listening that I am a mental health advocate and I speak on my personal experiences to also get other people to open up about theirs. And I do talk about mental, physical, and sexual abuse to also
Mm.
get other people to realize that they're not alone if they're going through that or something similar as well. And my journey through this has always been to get other people to open up about what they're going through and to give them some hope to keep pushing forward and to hopefully get them to share their story as well.
Yeah, it's awesome. I know you're very open about it. And I think that's one of the big things you repeat a lot when you're talking is about really letting your story speak to others. So, when did you first notice that your inner experience didn't necessarily match how you looked on the outside?
I started to first notice that something was a little bit off when it was around middle school and I was struggling with my appearance, struggling with my grades. I couldn't understand why I couldn't focus, couldn't pay attention. I had a hard time making friends. I was so isolated, just stuck in my own bubble, stuck in my negative thoughts. And that's when I realized that I also begin to start having thoughts that I knew were not necessarily normal for me, where I
Mm,
started struggling with suicidal thoughts. I started struggling with self harm, and all that negativity began to really take a toll on me mentally and physically as well. I started losing weight. My anxiety had worsened. Um,
mm.
I also started mixing up my panic attacks with my asthma attacks because I
Oh,
thought
wow.
when you're out of breath, that's automatically an asthma attack, even though I'm just
Hmm.
sitting down and I'm not exercising. So for me, it was so confusing mixing up anxiety with asthma and learning how to properly breathe again, also in those moments of distress, moments of anxiety. So I started noticing all of these signs, and that's when I started talking to my doctor about it, started becoming more open. And from there, we decided to take the therapy route and see what was best for me therapy, medication. Talking about my feelings was really what got me to where I am today. Talking
Hmm.
to my therapist was a way for me to find an outlet, find a voice for myself, and to also learn what I went through, learn how to get through it, and to find the right coping mechanisms to just get me to where I am now.
Can we talk a little bit more about like the whole asthma panic attack thing? Because I think that's super important. A lot of times when we talk about mental health, it's very like we think mental, it's just the brain, it's just how I'm thinking and feeling versus the really big physicality of it. Because I know for me, I have a condition called SVT, where my heartbeat starts going like 200 plus per minute, like out of nowhere, and I know for a very long time, they kept asking me if I had anxiety, and I do have anxiety, that's nothing new, but it was like, "No, this is not a panic attack," and I'm, like, a therapist, so I'm like, "I literally can tell you, this is not a panic attack, this is something else." So can you talk to me a little bit how you kind of started to untangle that, the physical versus, like, the mental health stuff?
Yes. The only way I was really able to untangle the mental health versus the physical health was through therapy and
Mhm.
through cognitive behavioral therapy. That is what really made me more aware of what I was experiencing. Now, I always had anxiety since I was a kid. I remember as early as 4 years old, heart racing so fast, sweaty palms. I always had just so much anxious like feelings that was just building up inside of me.
Mm.
And I always just hated talking to people. I was very shy. And anytime I did talk to people, that's when I noticed it would get worse. And I had asthma as early as 4 years old as well.
Mm.
And that was something that I was already learning how to deal with my asthma, learning how to deal with the inhalers and everything that the doctors were telling me. But then it got to a point where I knew something inside me was a little bit off, where I would just be sitting down and I'm out of breath in class and I'm staring at everyone. I'm constantly just looking around the room, looking at the door if someone's walking in. So I was very aware of my surroundings, a little too aware to the point
Mm.
where that's when I started getting more out of breath. And now I'm just sitting still. I'm not even moving. And I would try to sit as still as possible, but then I would still like feel myself just out of breath, feeling like I'm about to just fall and pass out. And there were times where I did pass out in class. And there were times where teachers did notice and they would just think maybe I'm dehydrated or something. But I would tell them, oh, I think I'm just having an asthma attack. So they would take me to the nurse's office. And from there, the nurse would ask me, well, what physical activity were you doing? And I said, well, I wasn't doing anything. I was just sitting down in class and out of nowhere, I'm just out of breath. I can't breathe. And I'm still just trying to grasp my air back in the nurse's office. And she was like, okay, listen, how about we go and talk to a school counselor and you can talk to her more about that. And from there, I was really confused, but I knew that there was something that was happening with myself, but I knew that if someone else were able to notice what was going on, then I was one step closer to finally understanding myself as well.
Yeah, no, and that's great that the nurse was able to kind of be like, this doesn't seem like it's an asthma attack. There might be something more. I think that's super important when we talk about like mental health, that there are, physical health providers who can tell the difference and really kind of point in the right direction. Now, in your journey, was there anybody else who really kind of stood out as being super helpful in helping you with your mental health?
Yes, I would say my grandma definitely had a really huge impact on my mental health, definitely in my early childhood. Now, she passed away when I was 8 from lung cancer, but regardless, she was always my safe place. She was the one person that I would go to whenever I needed a hug or I felt like I needed some comfort. And even though she didn't speak any English, she had her own ways of showing love through touch, through giving me hugs, through food. She loved cooking. She would also love to just sit down with me. She would cut some oranges, and from the orange peels, she would just make some silly faces because I feel like she knew that I was struggling. But even though we couldn't express each other's feelings through words, she still found a way to comfort me through her actions. So I would say she was definitely a major person in my life who has always had an impact on me, and she still does till this day. She's definitely someone who has taught me hope, and she also taught me how to really be confident in myself and to just not care what anyone thinks because I always knew that I always had her by my side.
Yes. I know she was one of the things that really caught me with your stories, how, even though there was a language barrier, she was your safe person growing up. And when you lost her, how you lost a lot of that kind of almost like safety that you had. Are there other important people who play a part in your story?
Yes, I would say my best friend, he's a childhood friend that I grew up with, Dom. He definitely has played a significant part in my journey. Now, we met in elementary school and we're still really close till this day. And he really showed me what a true friend was when I started getting bullied in middle school.
Mm.
I had hit puberty early. I had so much acne all over. And this was the beginning of sixth grade where nobody knew what acne was. It was so weird to everyone. Everybody was just so confused. And we still hadn't fully learned what acne was at that age.
Yeah. Acne is the worst. I don't think people realize how bad acne like really affects you. I struggled with acne for a very long time, and it's like it's something on the outside you can't really hide, and so everybody points it out, and then it just makes you super self-conscious.
Yes. And I would say that was one thing that I still couldn't understand myself. I was still trying to find the right doctors to get the right acne medications to take care of it, but it was still a struggle at the time. And I got bullied for that. where there was a new boy that transferred to my school. He transferred into most of my classes. I didn't know him. We never exchanged words, but he kept staring at me. And I was like, okay, this is really uncomfortable. I don't know why he's staring. And then eventually he started spreading rumors and telling everyone I looked like a pepperoni pizza. And then next thing I know, everyone's coming up to me and they're like, hey, you do look like a pizza. And I'm just like, no, like this is acne. And nobody understood that term. So that term alone just drew more bullying. It drew more confusion. It drew more attention to me just having so much acne. It was just like I was the center of attention at that time. And from there, that's when I had told Dom, and Dom had noticed too when people were coming up to me. So he eventually approached my bully and he said, leave Tiffany alone. Like, stop bullying her, stop bothering her. Like, this is acne, this is part of life. And eventually the kid did back off, but it still took a little bit time because next week came along and he was still bothering me. So that's when eventually the school got involved. I had spoke to the school about it. His parents came to the school. We had this group meeting, and eventually from there, things got better when his parents got involved. He started just leaving me alone finally. And from there, I was struggling with a lot of insecurities. Now, at this point, my mental health began to get worse. I just felt so out of place. I felt like I was just so weird compared to everybody else. And that's when my thoughts slowly started getting worse, where I started having more of these suicidal thoughts, more self harm. That was the point where things were really getting worse. And I couldn't even fully understand what I was going through.
Yeah. So talking about not understanding what's going on with you, how has your relationship with yourself and your mental health changed over time?
I would say my relationship with myself and my mental health has changed since childhood to adulthood in the sense that, yes, I still experience anxiety, depression, grief. I still experience all of these emotions. But now I'm at a point where I know how to cope with them so that on those bad days where those feelings start to arise, I know what to do now. I know how to cope in a healthy way where I don't have to let these emotions take over, where I don't let these emotions control my day, control my mind anymore. I now know that I have power over these emotions. I have power over how I feel. And I am also trying to remind other people that not every day you're going to feel good. There's still going to be those days where you're going to feel really down. You're going to feel anxious. You're going to feel all of these emotions again, but you just have to know what works for you to cope through and to push through it.
I think that's such an important message. When we talk about mental health, there are the good days and there are the bad days. And a lot of times we get stuck in the bad days that we forget there are good days. So I think that's a great message to take home, definitely. Was there anything that surprised you most about yourself during this process? Things that kind of like, you're like, oh, this is interesting.
Yes. Through this journey, I have never expected myself to become so vulnerable, to become so open to talking about mental health. This is something I never wanted to talk about as a kid. Even in my teenage years, I never wanted to talk about this. I always wanted to just keep it between me and my therapist, or just between me and Dom. I didn't want to tell anybody else besides those people because those were my safety people, until I realized that by being more open, that's how I'm able to help more people, to get them to open up about what they are going through as well. And through this, I've learned how resilient I've become. And that is something that I have never been able to say for myself until adulthood, until I have been finally able to find those healthy coping mechanisms and look at all of my mental health insecurities and depression, anxiety, and grief and say, hey, you no longer have power over me. Now I have power over you.
Yes. So you bring up the idea of resilience, and in Ariza Inspire Co, we have a course for resilience. How do you define resilience?
I would define resilience as being able to push through those bad days, to push through anything that you're going through and to come back stronger than you were before.
Mm,
And through this, I have learned that each day you become stronger. Even if you don't see the progress is still building up. And I would also say that resilience looks like helping others push through their bad days, even when I'm having a bad day too. To
mm,
look at other people and say, hey, listen, I know it's not easy. I know that what you're going through right now is tough. And I know it can be hard to manage this. But once you find those healthy coping mechanisms, you can push through it. And I try to remind other people that resilience, it's more about how you're able to overcome what you are feeling on those bad days, and that you do
mm.
not have to stay stuck where you are, that there are so many healthy coping mechanisms. You just have to find what works for you.
Yes, that's awesome. And speaking about giving back, what led you to start speaking out publicly about your mental health?
What led me to first start speaking about my mental health, I was 16. This was the prime of everything, where the abuse was getting worse mentally, physically, sexually. And the first idea I had in my head, besides therapy, I wanted to share my story with the world somehow. So I posted a video at the
Mm.
time on social media, and it had gotten over 1 million views. I wasn't expecting it. And I looked like a mess. I was crying. My hair was a mess. I just wanted to just post something, set up the camera, and just hopefully like a stranger would just be like, hey, like you're not alone in this. And I
Mhm.
only thought my video was going to get like 5 views because that first day it only had like 5, 10 views. And then after a few days went on, it had over 1 million views. And there
Oh,
was
wow.
thousands of comments of people who could relate, of people were like, hey, listen, if you keep sharing your story, you're going to reach more people. And there were so many positive comments. However, at that same time, my brother had saw the video and he had commented, and it started a lot of family problems all over again. There was
Mm.
so much tension, so much going on. He wanted me to delete the video. That had made my mental health a lot worse, where I felt
Yeah.
like, okay, I shouldn't be speaking up about this because now I'm starting problems in my home that the internet doesn't know about, that I'm not posting what's going on at home, that I just made things worse. And he would
Mm.
always tell me, you just opened a can of worms. And I would always tell him, well, if I'm opening this can of worms, then I'm going to keep opening that can of worms
Heck
until,
yeah.
yeah, until I feel like my story is heard, until I really feel like my story is reaching other people that same way that I did when I posted that video. And from there, I still just kept posting mental health since I was 16. And it was still a struggle. I had cousins commenting, uncles, aunts who necessarily did not agree with what I was posting. I had a lot of family members who were terrified that they were going to lose their jobs because I was posting my story. And that was something that I struggled with as well, just learning that my family didn't fully understand what I was going through and they couldn't accept what I was going through either. Now, my family is also foreign. So, mental health is something that they don't fully understand. It's
Mm.
something that is still unfamiliar to them because in their cultures, it's not something that is addressed enough. It's not something that they grew up learning about the way that I did in school as well. And
Mm.
I would also say that through sharing my story online and through therapy, that is what led me to becoming a mental health advocate today, to sharing my story at schools and also still on the internet today.
So it seems like the cost was kind of high for you in being honest about the things that you've experienced. Are there other emotional costs of being open about your mental health, especially on the scary place of the internet?
Yes, I would say the biggest cost was losing most of my family. At that time of posting these videos at that age, a lot of my family thought I was lying. A lot of people thought it was for attention. Now, that's one thing that I also wanted to talk about. A lot of people think that once you start sharing your story that you're doing it for attention. Now, that is not true at all, and that is such a common misconception that people still believe till this day. I was sharing my story to heal, to get other people to know that they're not alone, and to also help myself internally. It helped talking about it. That was the
Mm,
age where I realized, okay, this is helping me the more I talk about it, because it's also helping me understand what I went through and
yeah.
understand that what I went through was very real, that it still affects me, and that it's something that you don't just forget about. It's not something you just hide. It's not something that just goes away. It's something that stays with you forever. You just have
Yeah.
to learn how to manage through those emotions. And I would also say that trauma is something that lives inside of us. It lives, eats, breathes, sleeps inside of us. It's something that lives inside of our guts. And if you don't learn how to manage that, it starts to eat away at you day by day. It eats away at you mentally, physically, and emotionally, to the point where you can feel like you don't want to do anything, where you feel so hopeless, where you're still
Mhm.
trying to find that little glimpse of hope, but it's so hard because it's weighing you down like a
Yeah.
heavy anchor on your back.
Yeah, and I think that's something super important. I do EMDR. I'm a trauma informed therapist, and I know like when we talk about trauma, it's such a big thing that even though maybe even logic brain, we know that we like will react to things, and we don't know why we're reacting because our logical brain is saying there's we're safe, we're fine, but our body is remembering all of this stuff, and something is signaling to our body that we're not safe. Uh, in the beginning of what you were talking about, you were saying about like this common myth about attention and that people who are telling their stories are looking for attention. One of the things I know that I talk about in my part when we do our speaking engagements together is about the misconception of those talking about suicide or reaching out that they are looking for attention as well. Could you speak a little bit about that? Because I know your story deals with that a bit as well.
This was around 16 when I really started speaking out. My parents struggled understanding what I was going through. So from there, I didn't really have that family support. And I tried opening up to some cousins, but they still didn't understand.
Hmm.
And my brother would always tell everyone that I'm lying, that I'm
Mm.
going crazy. And he is also almost 20 years older than me. So the big age gap there, nobody was believing me at that young age compared to him, where he carried himself as this figure who was very mature, who he tried to portray himself as this masculine figure that had his life together, and then try to portray me as this teenager who was in distress, who was going through all of these emotions, who was going crazy. And he would always tell my parents that I'm lying and that I'm making things up for attention. And then my parents would sit down and talk to me and they would say, "Hey, listen, why do you want all this attention?" And I would
Mm.
tell my parents, "I don't want attention. I just want someone to understand what I'm going through. I want at least one person in this family to understand what I endured as a child, starting at 4 years old and ending at 17. That is
Mm.
a long time to be dealing with mental, physical, and sexual abuse. And for the
Mhm.
longest time ever, I was silenced. I felt like I had no voice. I always felt so voiceless because I'm fighting against my word versus his. Now,
Mhm.
you did mention the emotional cost. And for that, what it looked like for me was honestly losing my family. I lost a lot of my cousins, my uncles, my aunts, Nobody wanted to talk to me because everybody thought I was doing this for attention. Nobody knew what was going on inside. And I would always tell everyone, you don't live with me at home. You don't know what's going on behind closed doors. You only know what he's telling you, and what he's feeding you are lies. But he would reverse it. And
Mm,
it was always just this counter argument between what he says and what I say. So it was always this he, she thing. And that's when everybody just thought I wanted attention. And that's
yeah.
not what I wanted. I just wanted one person in my family to believe me, to sit down with me and say, hey, listen, I believe you. But I never got that growing up. The first time I got someone to say, hey, I believe you was in therapy. So from there is where I really found my voice. And I believe that if one person in my family just sat down with me, talked to me, and just listened, I probably would have been more open at a much earlier age. But I
Mm.
didn't start to begin that openness until therapy, until my later teenage years.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. And that's hard. That's hard when you're kind of like in an environment that it doesn't feel very supportive. Now that you are speaking a lot more about your mental health, what does support look like for you who's supporting others by speaking out?
Support to me looks like leaning on these healthy coping mechanisms that I still use till this day. Now, as a child, I really leaned heavily on art, poetry, writing, even hiking, my pet hamster. That was just always the skills that I had leaned on. I was always a arts and crafts person, so anything where I could sit down and do some sort of art and crafts, that had really helped me get some support. Now, I still use all of that today, but now I lean more towards the gym, focusing on my physical health and trying to put all my strength into that and to getting myself stronger, not only mentally, but physically as well. So now
Mhm.
that heavy anchor, I'm using it towards the gym and towards just improving my physical health, because your mental health is also just as important as your physical health as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's all connected. I mean,
Yes.
even just talking about your story of confusing asthma attacks and panic attacks, it's all connected, whether we want to believe it or not. But that's exactly why I've created courses like Emotional First Aid for Crisis Moments. Because sometimes what we really need isn't just time off, it's a toolkit for what to do when everything feels like too much. The course is practical, trauma informed, and it's video lessons that walks you through how to ground yourself, regulate your nervous system, and make a plan right in the middle of emotional overwhelm. Whether you're anxious, shut down, or just need some help, I'll teach you simple techniques like box breathing, vagus nerve activation, and crisis scripts. These are things that you can carry with you everywhere. It's fast, it's accessible, and it comes with a workbook so you're never kept wondering what to do next. You can find that course now at arizainspire.com and be ready for the next time you need some mental health support. Because real support starts with real tools. Now let's get back to the episode. So you keep talking about like coping skills and things that help you continue on in this your mental health journey. What are some like things that you use to cope, to regulate? Any specific skills you'd like to share?
Yes. Now, one skill that has really, really helped me the most is a DBT skill that I learned in therapy, which is drinking cold water, putting cold ice on your wrist, on your neck. Now, temperature really helps regulate the body's emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And this was something I discovered at a young age that I use so much till this day. Now, it could also be hot temperature as well, but I realized that didn't work for me. Now, what might work for other people may not work for me. So I learned that cold water, drinking cold water really helped calm down my anxiety and calm down my nerves anytime I started feeling that heart racing, the sweaty palms, that anxious feeling, I would just try to drink cold water and it would calm me down and bring me back to the state of calmness again.
Oh, that's a big one. I know I talk about that too with some clients. I'm like, you have to snap out of it. Go get some cold water. Go out, and then it's been cold here, so it's like go outside. Like you got to snap yourself out of it. So that is a great skill to have and really remind yourself of. That's awesome. I know we talked about the one myth about attention. Are there other things specific to your story that you feel need to be dismantled? Other myths or understandings, especially about like trauma and sexual abuse, if anything, that you feel needs to be understood?
Yes. Now, I know that it can be really hard for other people to open up about their stories, and I have had a lot of children from schools and students that have came up to me and opened up about sexual abuse. And I have been reporting a lot of cases to schools, and these children often say to me, "Hey, if I tell someone, that means my mom and dad are going to jail forever." And I say,
Yeah.
no, that's not true. If you tell someone they're not going to jail, you are getting the help that you need and that you deserve. You need more support than what you are getting right now. So you telling someone is just one step closer to you getting that support that you really need.
Yeah.
And a big misconception is a lot of these students and children are just stuck thinking that if they share their story and that they open up, that things are going to get worse at home.
Yeah.
I see the fear in their eyes. And when I look at them, I see my younger self in that same fear, in that same position where I was scared too to open up. And I try to remind people that when you open up, it can be really uncomfortable. It's not fun. It's a weird feeling. It's so uncomfy. But that's when healing begins and that's when growth happens. So
Mm-hmm.
I try to remind other people that once you start speaking up, you're helping yourself just one step closer to growth and to transformation as well.
Yes. Yes. That's awesome. It is a very scary thing. And I think that feeling stuck plays a major part in it. So I'm very glad that you're able to talk to kids and let them know that there is help and there is hope in those situations, because it does feel very hopeless when you don't think you have anybody to turn to. So I'm glad for that, definitely. Um, was there something you felt like you needed to hear earlier in your journey that could have really been helpful to you?
Yes. One thing that would have been helpful for me to hear earlier in my journey would definitely be that what I am feeling right now is temporary,
Hmm.
that it is not a permanent feeling, just like anxiety, depression, grief. All of these emotions are not permanent. They are just there for a short amount of time. Now, once you learn how to push through those emotions and find those healthy coping mechanisms, they start to fade away a little bit sooner. And you start to learn how to push those feelings away a little bit quicker as well. So I would definitely say that through my journey, I have learned that these coping mechanisms have really helped me establish a foundation for myself where I'm able to lean on these coping mechanisms to push other people to find coping mechanisms and to lean on them as well. And just to also let anyone know that if they are struggling, there is so much help out there that they don't have to feel stuck. And if they do feel stuck, the first step that I recommend is just texting or calling the hotline 988, because that's what I would do even at that young age. And there would always be someone there to support
Mhm.
me, to listen to me. And no matter how long you need, they will stay there for however long and they will help you through what you're going through in that moment.
So you've actually contacted and gone through 988.
Yes.
Okay, can we talk a little bit more about that? Because I have been like I know I always talk about it too, about as being a support line as well. What has been your experience? How is it calling? How is it? Do you text it as well? Like, give me a little bit more insight because I feel like there's still some mystery around this tool that I know I tell people all the time about as well.
Yes. Now, I have used 988 so many times. It's been a countless amount of times since I was in middle school, around there, to high school and college, and then now adulthood. So I feel like I've had a long journey with it, but it has always been so helpful. You will find the most down to earth, kind hearted people talking to you on the other line. Now,
Nice.
these are strangers that they worked so hard to help so many people every day, and they are so supportive. They sit with you, they listen to you, and they are so open as well to giving you advice, to giving you support, to helping you find coping mechanisms as well. And they also try to make sure that you're in a safe environment, that you're in a safe space. So,
Mm,
one thing that I really love is that they try to make it known that it is a safe space when you're texting or calling them. Now, I've used both. I've texted and I've called. And for anybody listening, they are available 24/7. 24 hours of the day, you can reach out at any time. And I try to remind this to students as well, because I do get a lot of questions. Does it really help? Is there really someone to talk to? Yes.
yes.
Yes, there are so many supportive, loving people that are there to help you. This is what they do. They're there to support you, and they sit down and they ask you, "Hey, how are you feeling right now? How can I help you?
Mm.
What do you need me to do? If you need something right now, can I send someone over if you feel like you're in a crisis?" They are there to help you with anything you're going through, even if it's just you want to talk about a bad day that you had.
Oh, that's
There was
awesome.
some bad days I had at school where I'm like, "Hey, I got a bad grade today and my teacher was upset and I had to stay after school." They were there to support me, where they said, "Hey, listen, it's okay. You're going to get bad grades. Not every grade is going to be perfect." So from there, I have really leaned on 988. That hotline has really played a significant role in my journey. And I try to promote it as much as I can, because
No,
there
that's
are so
awesome.
many people that don't know how helpful it is. And you can remain anonymous. You don't have to reveal your name. You don't have to reveal what you don't want to. You share what you want to. And from there, they give you the support that you need.
Oh, no, I love that because I know that I'm always down for, like, new tools, new things that could be super helpful. And so we hear about 988 all the time. And I've never had really any experience of it. So to hear that someone who has been advocating for mental health and someone who has had such a journey has used this tool as a part of that journey is something that I think everyone needs to hear about as well. Being an advocate as well, has there what about advocacy? What about speaking your story has kind of like surprised you in this process? And what do you do to kind of like take care of yourself in this process? Because it's a lot.
Yes. What has really surprised me along this process is I never expected to reach so many people, so many students who have opened up about their personal story. Now, I thought that nobody was going to come up to me and share their story, but I make it known in my story to talk to me if they need someone to lean on, and that I'm here for them as well, that I'm not just here to give a speech, that I'm also here to support them with whatever they need. So, what really shocked me up until now is just hearing hundreds of stories of abuse, of neglect, of trauma, of grief, of depression, as little as 9, 10 years old, that they don't know how to cope with this. And through sharing my story, I've had them come up to me and just open up. And from there, I have seen so much change happen, where I have guided them to the counselor's office. And from there, the counselors reassure me and let me know, "Hey, listen, we'll take it over from here. thank you so much. And we're definitely going to get the student the help that they need. And we have all the resources here. So don't worry. Now, it can be really hard taking in these stories and just hearing everything because that brings back flashbacks for me. I look at these students as if I'm looking back at my younger self. And
Mm-hmm.
I always wished I had someone like me growing up. I always
Mm-hmm.
wished that I had someone to be so vulnerable and to open up to. So I now understand from a student's perspective when I open up my story and they're like, wow, they always find like a way to relate to something. Even if they
Mm-hmm.
can't relate to everything, they relate to something because I cover so many different topics. So even if it's one student who's like, hey, you talked about your culture and feeling indifferent. I feel really like out of place with my culture at this school because a lot of schools, there's not enough diversity where there's so many students that feel left out. And I try to remind other people that I'm there to support them. Before I leave the school, I try to remind them, hey, listen, I'm here. If you need to talk to someone and you don't want to talk to a teacher right now or a counselor, talk to me because I will support you. I will listen and I will help you. And I have realized just by saying that at the end of my speech, that that has opened so many voices and so many students to sharing their story. And right now, as an adult, I've been really leaning on the gym to just cope with everything. And I try to spend at least 3 hours a day when I can to just really like let out all my emotions, find my strength, build my muscle. And by doing that, that has helped me just slowly build myself up stronger mentally as well. And I also have started some support groups for Zoom for people that are struggling with mental health. I
Nice.
found a community of people who are going through mental health as well, all different ages. And I have learned that through my voice and just through talking about mental health on these Zoom meetings, that I have been able to also connect with people all around the world, not just like where I am now.
Yeah.
So I've been really trying to promote my mental health meetings with these people. And sometimes I have these little group chats where I just say, hey, this is my next Zoom event if anyone's interested. And I have found a really nice community of people that are so supportive through my healing journey and where we just uplift one another. And I have found that there are so many coping mechanisms that I've still been learning trial and error with. But right now, I feel like the gym has helped the most and building this community that I've built on the internet.
I mean, you do so much right now. I mean, speaking out, going to schools, talking, listening, all of these things. What's in your future, Tiffany? What are you working towards in the next like year, 2 years? What can we look forward to when it comes to you?
One thing that I really look forward to is trying to change the world in a way that maybe nobody has tried before. And I want to create some sort of, whether it's a button that students can take home where if they're really struggling, they could just press this button and 911 comes.
Oh,
I have
wow.
learned that I see it all the time where a lot of students come up to me where they say, hey, if I don't have a phone and I don't have access to text or call 988, what do I do? And in those moments, I just start really thinking like, okay, I try to tell them, well, if you don't have access to a phone and that hotline, you can come to school and talk to one of your teachers, one of your counselors. Tell them what you are going through. Do not wait until the next day. Do it now. And just hearing all these questions about, I don't have a phone. What do I do? I really want to create some sort of safe button or something where students can take home where they press it and 911 instantly comes. Because there are so many students that don't have access to the internet, that
Mm.
don't have access to this hotline, and they go home and things get really, really intense for them and they don't know what to do and they need that help right then and there. So I want to try to just come up with some way to see if I could really push for this advocacy a little bit further by just creating something that students can take home and feel safe with
Mm.
whenever they need that support and that help.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. That's awesome to hear because I definitely think like mental health, as much as we remove the stigma every day about it, there's still so many like gaps and so many things that still need to be addressed. And you're right. If somebody doesn't have access to a phone, doesn't have access to a person, what are they going to do? And that sounds like a very cool plan. I would love to see something like that come through. Definitely. So kind of to wrap things up a little bit, what's one word that describes your mental health right now?
One word that describes my mental health would be transformation.
Mm.
I would say that my journey has been one of transformation. I'm constantly evolving, constantly growing, and I know that my mental health journey is making so much progress. I'm not in the same place I was a year ago, and I'm definitely not in the same place I was 10 years ago. So
Yeah.
I know that I'm constantly evolving and I'm growing. And as I'm growing, I'm helping other people grow and find the skills that they need to evolve and to transform. I know that it's all a healing process, it's a healing journey, but I know that there are so many brighter days coming. And I try to remind that to all these students to just hold on to hope. Even if it feels hopeless, there are still so many brighter days that you can't see because we can't see the future. But I try to remind other people that the past is in the past. Right
Mhm.
now, you are living in the present. And to do whatever it is to cope in healthy ways to get through what you are going through right now, because you will see the progress in the future. And I just try to remind people to use the 988 hotline, to utilize all their resources, to lean on the support that they have, whether it's through their teachers, counselors, whoever it is in their lives, to lean on their adults to get them to get through what they're going through. And to also let other people know that mental health is very real. It
Mhm.
could be the person that's sitting next to you in class, it could be a coworker, it could be a family member, it could be the person that you are closest to, your best friend that is suffering silently. So I try to remind people that if you know someone that's going through it, or if you're going through it, to get help, to speak up, and that it's okay to reach out for help and to not be afraid of what could happen, but start to realize how you speaking up can change your world in a matter of seconds.
Yeah. No, no, definitely. Thank you so much, Tiffany, for that word and a lot of the things that you've said today. It's super encouraging to see you and to hear you talk and tell your story and the big difference that you're making out there in the community. I think it's awesome. Is there anything that you have not said before we kind of end today that you want to just let people out there know? Anything that you haven't said already?
Yes, I would just want to add that if there's anyone struggling with their mental health and they have any negative coping mechanisms right now, that I really encourage you to just try to break out of those cycles, to just try to just lean towards some healthy coping mechanisms, whether it's through writing, through poetry, through the gym, through a hobby, joining a club, art, no matter what it is, to please, the best thing you can do for yourself and to get through those tough times is just leaning on those healthy coping mechanisms and to hold on to that, because that is what will really, really help you get through these challenges. And I also want to let people know that you have a voice too. and that it's also worthy of being heard.
Yes. Thank you so much for your time today, Tiffany. I can't wait for this to just be out there and everybody to hear these amazing things that you've talked about today. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing some of your wisdom and the things that you've learned and all of your advocacy. I'm going to see about adding some of your, if you have any information that you would like to share, we're down to share it too on my end. So just let me know if there's anything else you want to add. Okay. But thank you so much. But that's it for today's episode. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. If you found something helpful, inspiring, or just validating, I'd love if you'd follow the show, leave a review, or share this episode with someone who really needs that encouragement for today. Are you looking for more tools to help you with your mental health journey? Then head over to arizainspire.com. There, you'll find free downloadable resources. You'll have self-paced courses. There's some workbooks there. There's some other resources like the Feeling Wheel. Even our live workshop, Resilience X, is featured on the website. But don't forget to follow us on those socials, my friends, on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook at Ariza Inspire Co. And that's where we keep this conversation going. I share different mental health tips. I get a little too real on there and probably make fun of myself along the way. But if you have questions, you're going to find me there first. But at the end of the day, my friends, take care of yourself. And I'll catch you next time.